I am hate. When you look at me, you look at hate.
When I look at you, I look at hate.
When you look at me, you know what hate is.
Hey everybody, this is Atticus the TheDeathMetaller, and welcome to another exciting episode of the TheDeathMetaller Reviews. Here in this episode, we're going to be reviewing Mark Morton and his debut solo album, Anesthetic. So without further ado, let us begin the review of Anesthetic now, shall we? Now, those of you who are not aware of who Mark Morton is, I think a lot of you who Mark Morton is, but those of you who are not familiar who he is, I will just lay it out here right now. Mark Morton is the lead guitarist of one of my favorite metal bands, the groove metal band from Richmond, Virginia, Lamb of God. And I think Mark Morton is a very, very amazing guitarist of his own respects of the bands. Though, I mean, I will indeed say that my favorite members off of Lamb of God have to be the Adler brothers, Willie and Chris Adler. But, I mean, Mark Morton, in his own regards and respect, is a pretty talented guitarist. And upon hearing that he was making a solo album, I was really interested into seeing what this would all come about. And this album, Anesthetic, is quite honestly one of the best albums I have ever checked out this year. Goodbye! Anesthetic was a collaborative effort between Mark Morton, Jake Oney from the metal band Oney, and Josh Wilbur. Now, Josh Wilbur has been known to have worked with such bands like Mark Morton's band Lamb of God and Trivium, just to name a few bands that he has, worked with. But his solo album, Anesthetic, is so unique and just so absolutely amazing. Now, you would think it would be, just all metal songs coming from a metal musician like Mark Morton. Well, Mark Morton has shown that he is very diverse into his musical influences, where you see a lot of influences from groove metal, heavy metal, rock, blues. It just goes to show that Mark Morton has a lot of diversity within his music range. I mean, a lot of metal musicians, before they became metal musicians, listened to a lot of, not metal shit and stuff. I mean, Neko Butcher, one of the most, the basis for one of the most metal bands ever, Mayhem, he fucking listens to Depeche Mode and Beastie Boys, for crying out loud. So, I mean, Mark Morton has, listened to a lot of stuff that were, outside of metal, like, blues and rock and all this other stuff given to all the special guests onto this solo album that he's made. It just really goes to show that he's made a lot of friends from, like, a lot of different music genres, and he has mashed it all together onto this really amazing solo album. Now, I have no problem with solo albums from certain metal musicians that I love. I mean, my favorite albums from, metal musicians come from Jeff Loomis, one of my favorite guitar heroes who made 2 solo albums and a solo EP, and George Coleus, the drummer for Nile, which still to this very fucking day, his solo album of 2015, Invictus, was the best album of 2015 in my opinion. Just given the fucking fact that he did all the music, all the guitar, bass, and drums and vocals onto that album, and that, all the guests that he provided onto this album, it was such an epic album of 2015. Now, Mark Morton sought a lot of help for a lot of very interesting, faces in music. I mean, for guitars, obviously, he did all the guitars, but he had help from additional guitars from Mark Ford of the Black Crowes. And for drums, oh god, he got a lot of drummers onto helping out onto this album. With such names like Alex Bent of Trivium, Jean-Paul Gasser of Clutch, Ray Luzier of Korn, Roy Mayorga of Stone Sour, and Steve Gorman of the Black Crowes. As for the bassists, he had help from Paolo Gregolato of Trivium, David Ellefson of Megadeth, Mike Inez of Alice in Chains, and Yanni Papadopoulos of Liza Vida. And for keyboards, he had Chris Brooks of Leons. And for vocals, he had a lot of very amazing vocalists off of this album. And we're gonna name all those vocalists with these tracks that I have chosen that were my personal favorites off of Anesthetic. And we're gonna go right to it right now. The first track on this list is Cross Off, which featured the late vocalist of Linkin Park, Chester Bennington. Now, when I first heard the news that Chester Bennington unfortunately killed himself on July 20th of 2017, it really hit me hard. As someone who grew up listening to Linkin Park, a band that really got me into rock and metal music, it really hit me so fucking home because Linkin Park really did introduce me to a lot of the music that I listen to. I mean, fucking Goat Whore. If I didn't listen to Linkin Park, I would not be listening to Goat Whore to this very fucking day. That's how much of a huge impact Linkin Park has made to a guy like me. Now what's amazing over onto this song, this was actually the song that got me very interested into Mark Morton's solo album. I heard articles that Mark Morton was collabing with Chester Bennington on a project before Chester Bennington's death. And that really got my interest until it was official that Mark Morton brought out his solo album and it was being released very soon, and that it had Chester Bennington as the first track. And hearing the song Cross Off was really amazing to me. It was basically like a Lamb of God song, but with Chester Bennington on the vocals. And it worked so well, and it was great knowing that Chester's last work before his death was that of Mark Morton's solo album. And it worked so well. It was perfect. And it was just a great last gift to all of us before Chester's demise. And have a listen and rest in peace, Chester. Thank you for making me the person that I am today.
And cross off the days so blacked out and hide behind the lines. Keep staring down the sun and all
the next track on this list is by far one of my favorite tracks off of this album, Sworn Apart, featuring the vocalist of the alternative rock band Papa Roach, Jacoby Shaddix. Now, to get things out of the way real quick, I mean, Jacoby Shaddix, like, what he looks like right now, the years have not looked kindly onto him due to his abuse onto alcohol, but I hear that he's doing a lot better. He's been 7 years sober, and he's doing very good for himself and doing a lot of good collaborations along with, Mark Morton and Within Temptation with their latest album. He's doing really good for himself, and I'm absolutely happy that he's doing good and still chiving on with Papa Roach and all this other stuff. And I do love his vocal style. I think Jacoby has a very good vocal style, and it worked so well with this song right here. This song is basically like a little bit of like that of what you would hear from a typical Lamb of God song, but it's more upbeat, more uplifting. It's a song where, you can't stop taking shit from a lot of people, or also the stuff that's going on internally into your head. I think we can all agree that, we've all struggled here and there in our lives, but it's a very uplifting as well as a very kick-ass song, knowing that, you can chive through it day by day by day. I know I've gotten a lot of problems over to myself. I know I struggle a lot throughout my personal life, but I just take it day by day by day. And this song is a pretty good uplifting as well as a very kick-ass song to just get through some struggling times in your life. I know it kind of sounds like what Mitch Lucker said, just listen to music, it gets better. But in a sense, he's kind of right. But I love this song. It's a very positive, uplifting, kick-ass song that gets you through some tough times. I just loved this track. But yeah, Jacoby Shaddix absolutely was made for this song. Now, have a listen. On this list is Axis, featuring Mark Lanigan. Now, this track really shows us firsthand on the diversity of the music when it comes to Mark Morton's Anesthetic right here. This is a very bluesy song with Mark Lanigan's vocals. It really does set the mood. It is a song that is heavily into the blues with a mix of little bluegrass country and a bit of heavy metal into the mix. And I find it a really very amazing song. I would picture this song, this song would be very suitable at a nice long stroll, like a nice long drive with your car, whether it be like you're driving through like rural areas, like I know in my state of Florida, you know, the part Hastings, Florida, where there's a lot of rural areas and stuff, as well as, you know, mountainous regions like in Colorado, Idaho, Utah, and all that stuff. Just any other rural place with, you know, this track playing in the back. It's a very relaxing song, in my opinion, and it really shows very firsthand the diversity of Anesthetic and, you know, the diversity of Mark Morton's, you know, musical influences right here. So have a listen.
I have been lost in wandering, a wanderer I remain. Met Judas in West Texas, tried to take my name. Now I am lost in wandering, and wandering I am blind.
The next track on the list is The Never, featuring the vocalist of the thrash metal band Testament, Chuck Billy, and the vocalist of the progressive metal band Oni, Jake Oni himself, who also helped produce this album. Now, of course, this is another song that has that typical Lamb of God sound, but with Chuck Billy as the vocals. He dominates more onto the vocals, and then later onto the song, Jake Oni comes in. Now, I have heard of Oni before and a couple of times, but I've never really was invested into Oni. But after listening to this song, The Never, I feel that after later on down the line, I might get the chance to listen to a couple tracks off of Oni, which, you know, Oni's a pretty good band in their own respect, but having Chuck Billy of Testament help out onto this album was really amazing. I mean, I've seen Testament twice, very kick-ass thrash band in their own respect, and I respect Chuck Billy with his vocal style and, you know, him air guitaring all the goddamn time. The last two times I've seen Testament live. I mean, Chuck Billy's a really awesome dude. But the song really makes me feel like that I'm getting really ready for battle, like I'm in the heat of like a modern war or some shit like that. It really has that feel into it, like, you know, you're fighting the enemy with your assault rifle and stuff like that. It has that mood right there, so have a listen. Track off of this list, and I know my good friend Ranter in Shades is going to love this part onto this video. And this next track is Save Defiance, featuring the vocalist for the alternative metal band Alter Bridge, Miles Kennedy. Now, I will indeed say Miles Kennedy has an epic singing voice. His vocals are downright God tier. It works so well with this song right here. It definitely has the alternative metal vibe going on with this song, and I think this is a song that is, you know, very uplifting and very powerful. It would be very suited to, like, you know, a superhero film, into my opinion. Like, I mean, with the new Avengers movie coming out very soon, I feel that it would be very suitable that this song would be into, you know, the mix of Avengers Endgame when the Avengers finally kick the shit out of Thanos. So, very epic and uplifting song. Track on the list is another favorite track of mine, and it is such an absolutely game changer, a very unique track off of this album, Reveal, featuring, and I believe I'm pronouncing her name correctly, Naima Z Maddox. I am hoping that I pronounce her name right. Now, I have never heard of her until I just listened to her track off of Anesthetic, and I also discovered her Bandcamp. And holy shit, her type of music is so unique. It's a mix between blues, jazz, and folk music all wrapped up into one. I have her Bandcamp on the description below if you want to check her out, but oh my god. This song is so unique. It is so awesome, so kick-ass, and also very calm. It's a very calm blues, jazzy type of song that really gets you all mellowed down. I would picture this as if you were going on a date with your significant other, like at a very fancy restaurant in some sort of sense, or you're at a blues show and this comes out. It is such a very good track, and it again shows the diversity that Mark is willing to show out, that he plays more than just metal music onto Lamb of God. This is like a very amazing track off of this album.
Feel and then reveal you may not be who you are right at this moment, right at this moment, right at this moment.
And now we go on to the final track off of this review. And this was actually the first song that I've listened to, the first single off of Anesthetic. The Truth is Dead, featuring vocalists Elisa White Glues, formerly of The Agonist and the current vocalist of Arch Enemy, and Mark Morton's bandmate, Randy Blythe. Now, I really do love it when, you know, fellow bandmates help out with their band members' solo albums. I mean, it is very relevant when it came to George Coleus's Invictus, where he had his bandmates Carl Sanders and Dallas Tuller Wade, when he was still around, helping him out onto his solo album. And I really do like that when it comes to solo albums and where they have their bandmates come in and help out with some of the tracks. And it really stands very true with Randy Blythe as well as Elisa White Glues being into this track. And it features, you know, the diversity of Elisa White Glues doing her growls, screams, and clean singing, as well as Randy Blythe doing his screams, growls, and also doing more of his clean singing that he did with the 2012 release, Resolution. And he's continued that with Sturm und Drang, and I'm hoping that Randy Blythe does more clean singing with the upcoming Lamb of God album coming out. But he does it pretty well with this song right here. It sounds like a typical Lamb of God song when you have, especially with Randy Blythe into the mix, but you also got Elisa White Glues with her growls and her clean sings, and it works so perfectly with this track right here. And I'm very glad that, you know, Mark had made the decision to bring in his bandmate for this final track off this album. So have a listen here, kiddies. Into my head, Morton's Anesthetic really, since we're at the very beginning of 2019, you know, we're 3 months into 2019 already, we got an amazing and kick-ass solo album brought forth by the lead guitarist of Lamb of God, Mark Morton. Not only does he do groove metal, alternative rock, and heavy metal tracks onto this album, he also brings out a bit of diversity with jazz and blues into the mix of his songs off of this album. The guests that were featured, the vocalists that were featured onto this album were pretty top-notch, really good friends with Mark, and it was also a good album to show off the last contribution to Chester Bennington to the world before he passed away. And not to mention the musicians that were behind the bass, drums, guitar, keyboards onto this album really fit very well with really good artists like Alex Bent, Paulo Gregolato, Ray Luzier, and, you know, everybody else. They've really contributed and brought out their 110% onto this album. I will indeed say Anesthetic gets a 10 out of 10 for this review. So, what did you guys think about Mark Morton's Anesthetic? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Would you be willing to see if he actually brings out more solo albums like that of Jeff Loomis? Leave him down in the comments below, and stay tuned for more videos. Without further ado, ladies and gents, I am Atticus, the Deathmetaller. Hope you liked this video. Subscribe to my channel. Links are down in the description below. Keep it metal, and have an excellent and blessed day, y'all.
I pick you up where I put you down, so lost and found. Another trip on the misery go round. Still pictures of life it was, it's more than